So today's session will be recorded. If you do have any questions as we're stepping through, please feel free to type them into chat. We will incorporate them into the session. I think today's session is going to explore quite a few different areas in this particular topic of can online really replace in-person sessions? And I think it's going to create some thoughtful discussions later on. We do have some upcoming events that we do have planned for the next few months. That one session we have that's coming up is all about creative thinking. So if you're in a bit of the winter blues and you're looking for a way of sparking some different ways of thinking, the creative thinking session is a great one to join. I've actually used some of the foundations just recently on looking at our price book, and it really allowed us to look at it in a completely different way. I highly recommend checking out that session. That one's on March 16th at 5. The next one is we do not have enough fun. All we do is we talk about work, and then we go to sessions at 5 o'clock to talk about work. So we're going to have a little fun, and we're going to have a CS comedy night that's going to be on April the 27th at 5 o'clock. So if you're in the crowd and you are funny, and which means anyone laughs at your jokes, then please do send us a message. We would love to have you on our comedy night. Any more of our upcoming events is posted on our website, which is csandfocus.com. Just move over to the events. If you're listening to the webinar after the fact, then thank you. You either navigated to our website and saw the recording that we had, or you saw the email we sent with the recording itself. If you're interested in being a speaker or be part of the comedy night, please just drop me a line. It's star@csandfocus.com. I promise I'll get back to you, but it might take a day or two because I am terrible at checking my CS and Focus email. With that, we have some messages from our wonderful sponsors at Catalyst. If you haven't checked out their platform, you should totally do so. It's a pretty neat platform, and they really do put customer in the center. So passing it over to our friends at Catalyst.
Awesome. So my name is Diana. I was a customer success manager here at Catalyst. Now I'm a customer success manager strategist, totally different stuff, but Catalyst really changed the game for me as a CSM. I came from a Salesforce sort of setup, and for me, Salesforce was a little clunky, a little slow. It took me a while to get my job done. So if I had to describe Catalyst in 3 words, it would be efficient, insights, and action. So the efficiency bit is, if I'm having to update things in Salesforce, then I have to go like record by record, update that way. But in Catalyst, I can update everything in line. If I write a note, then that's my customer note. I can update fields, trigger the next action, and also document all my information in one place. The insights bit, right? You can have all this information that lives in all these disparate systems in one place. So I'm talking about your Salesforce integration, maybe those Zendesk tickets, just to keep you in the loop of what's happening with a specific account. Also BI embed and data warehouse information. So the last bit is the action. So you have all this data in Catalyst. Now what? You get to the part where you build out that robust weighted health score, and that allows you to take action as a CSM, the right action that's going to drive some sort of value with your customer. So that is Catalyst. If you're interested, you can reach out to me personally, and I'm happy to set something up with you.
Thank you so much. I love how you disseminated that down to the 3s. If you are online and you're interested in being a sponsor, please reach out to my partner in crime, Maheen, at csandfocus.com. All right, let's get to the meat of why we're all here. We have an incredible list of panelists today that we're going to start to unpack. Really, is online better than in person? Or what are some of the things you do need to consider if you are starting to gravitate towards back in person? So we have our first panel, which is Vish here. He's from our friends at Microsoft. We had Anita, who is a chief churn crusher, and then Madelaine, who's here from Street Contxt. So say hi, everyone that's on the panel.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
So I'm going to stop sharing screens so that we can see the faces of our lovely panelists. So you can see when things start to get really heated. That's here, which I think will be great. If you do have questions, like I mentioned earlier, as it relates to this topic, please do fire them into chat. I will integrate them in as we navigate through. But first, let's warm things up a little bit and let's talk about, well, before the pandemic started, shall we? And Madelaine, I'll start with you. And I'll ask each one that's part of the panel is, did you travel to a customer site and for what purpose? And while you're at it, introduce yourself as well.
I'll start with the introduction then. So I am Madelaine Krieger. I lead our customer success team at Contxt. A little bit of context on who Contxt is. We give capital markets a more intelligent and personalized way to use email. You wonder, how can email be so interesting? But really what we do is take the guesswork out and infuse email readership insights into the art of client coverage. We work with more than 130 different broker dealers and investment banks globally, ranging from the biggest investment banks in the world down to small little research shops. And they use us to deliver more relevant and proactive client services without compromising the efficiency of their day-to-day. If you're interested in learning more about that, I know that sounds kind of vague. Obviously, of course, you can reach out to me via LinkedIn. And start to answer your question about, before the pandemic. Obviously, being in customer success, I think I've always enjoyed the in-person side of things and building those relationships in person. The purpose of those visits were typically QBRs or some sort of deal-related activity, right? You kind of set a meeting in place, you deliver an agenda beforehand, you'd go in and you talk about actions, outcomes, what do you want to achieve, how do you grow the relationship? And really the outcome of a lot of those were, how do we drive more business and value? So it was kind of going into those meetings, I think, reflecting back on it with an intention in mind that, you hope the outcome is something that's going to drive revenue at the end of the day. I started this job during the pandemic, so I'm now speaking to my in-person visits at my previous job, but that is how I remember, so long ago now, the in-person visits of the time in 2019.
Thanks, Madelaine. Anita, over to you. Please do introduce yourself and let's talk about the pre-pandemic and whether you traveled to meet your customers.
Absolutely. So my name's Anita Toth. I'm a chief Churn crusher. I actually work with CS leaders around customer feedback and voice of customer. So really what we do are providing customer insights, namely surveys, focus groups, interviews. And even though my business has been online and we've worked in terms of our clients online, one of the biggest changes we had, and it was really challenging, was around customer interviews and speaking with customers directly. It's one thing to do it over Zoom. It's a totally different thing to do it in person, where you can, really see the whole environment, see the person, and are able to pick up perhaps subtle things within the conversation that you might miss on Zoom. So for us, it was a big switch. It's working okay. But I'm kind of like Madelaine, like I really like to be face-to-face with people, and there's something about it. There's a chemistry that you just can't quite get the same way online. So for us, yes, it was a big switch. But I don't know if it's going to be coming back. So, maybe through this discussion, we'll figure out, is this a good next move for us, or do we stay as we are now?
Excellent. Pardon the puppy on my lap. I have a sick dog today, and so just need some nurturing. Vish, over to you. Please introduce yourself and let's talk about pre-pandemic.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vish Walia. I've taken on a new role. I have taken on a role called Global Scale Strategist, where my focus is to build scale strategies for our customers worldwide at Microsoft. Prior to that, I was a customer success manager in Toronto, and I was managing the top 5 banks. Maybe some of you are CSMs. So prior to this whole, disruption, I would say, again, as a CSM, I would love to meet with my customers And my mandate was to work with them, collaborate with them, and help them to deploy our business applications and also drive usage so that they can deliver or achieve business impact. And it was one of those success planning workshops where I met with my customer and their entire team. And since then, the world has become an online working model.
Excellent. Just by show of hands, how many of you have actually traveled in the last 2 years, other than, around your block or to the grocery store? Oh, wow. Okay. A few of you. That's great. Well, let's first get into, maybe this is like the first controversial topic that's here is, do you feel that online sessions are actually equivalent to in person? And Vish, since we just finished with you, how about we have you kick us off?
Sure. So nothing beats in person, hands down, right? And I'm sure we all agree to that. But at the same breath, I would say that in the last 2 years, virtual meetings have become the lifeline of businesses that have been impacted by pandemic. And tools like Zoom, Microsoft Team and Google Meet have made online meetings pervasive. Now, as I said, as a customer success manager, my role is to have meetings, conduct workshops, sessions, and I can do all those online. So virtual meetings have become norm, but the way I look at the future is that we will be embracing in a hybrid model where we will have the luxury of in-person meetings, but then we will also have to have virtual meetings, online meetings that will pave the way for us in the future. Now, there are trade-offs, right? Because each of these options have limitations. So I would say equivalent or not equivalent, but the silver bullet is that we will be embracing both the models moving forward.
Anita, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I have to agree with Vish that going forward, the hybrid model is, I think that's how it's going to work, and perhaps a little more prioritization. I have noticed with the pandemic, some of the just in life in general, and then also in terms of work processes, it made us evaluate whether this is necessary, whatever that process may be. Can we stop and change it? Yes, we can. Okay, great. This seems to actually be working better. So in some ways, even though the pandemic was such a challenge and we all scrambled in the beginning, I think that some things actually got better. And one of them is being able to have meetings, at least for myself, a little more directed. And now I can choose to prioritize when I go and meet in person, because sometimes I didn't have that. And it just felt like almost all of my meetings were in person first, and second was online. And it seems that has flipped now, where the assumption is we'll meet online first, and then we can meet in person once we get to a point where it feels like that's the next best step. So I agree with Vish that there's going to, we're moving into this hybrid model, and be curious to see. I know being in Canada here that things are opening back up for us. So, how that will impact going forward. I think there'll just be greater discernment about whether we should be online or meeting in person than perhaps we had pre-pandemic.
Madelaine, what about yourself?
So I agree that the hybrid is around to stay. And, I do personally like being able to do meetings remotely. Do I think meetings are as effective remote and virtual than they are in person? I think the answer to that is no. I think there's a lot of distraction that you can find just staring at a screen, right? Even right now, all of you on here, you don't know if I've got work going on the other side of my other screen, my phone going on with something on it. I think there's just a lot of room where people, and I find myself too, being able to do other things while you're on a meeting that you wouldn't have when you'd be in person, focused, present, and available, to be there. Do I think there's any going back to a full in-person world? No, but I very much see the value and the quality of what comes out of an in-person meeting, more so than a remote meeting.
I think it's interesting, but Vish and Anita are saying as well about the hybrid. I agree with you, Madelaine, as well. It's interesting about how the hybrid approach can actually start to drive a more meaningful relationship. prior to the pandemic, we did lean really heavy on an in-person meeting as a way of establishing a relationship. But now it's actually starting to be phrased as more of augmenting the relationship. Madelaine, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, for us as a business, and I'm speaking, to the way we're doing it now, previously, like I mentioned, we would go in person and you would be forced to kind of have those meetings be surrounded by revenue or the thing that the mission you were trying to accomplish. You can do all of that remote now, right? Business is carried on, people close deals, people build relationships remotely. So I think what I have definitely found the most value in over the course of, the last 2, almost 3, whatever it is, years now, is that when you have an in-person meeting, it doesn't have to be surrounded by an objective that you're trying to accomplish. You can really just go and build a relationship in person with nothing else attached to it. You don't have to worry about bringing a paper to sign a deal, to do anything else. For us now, a visit to go to see a client is really just to have that face-to-face time and be able to become more personable. You can build those. I completely agree with you, Anita and Vish, that you can build those relationships. And it's almost like the pre-dating, you're kind of getting warmed up, you're getting to know each other. And then you meet in person and everything kind of changes and you take that relationship even further because you're able to assess how somebody interacts. You can read body language. There's all those kind of different pieces that you get meeting with somebody in person that you can lead up to, I think, online. But that just changes a little bit when you get there.
Anita, what's your thoughts?
I want to do like the hands up celebration emoji. Madelaine said that so well. I think she just really put what I've been feeling but hadn't quite articulated. And that is, the dating to now you're taking this to a totally different level when you meet in person. And I had this with one of my clients. He was overseas. We managed to meet here. We've been talking all throughout the pandemic, and it really was on a totally different level. We didn't come with an agenda. We just met, and time flew by, and in many ways it cemented the relationship in ways that even though I'd been meeting people for years before, it didn't seem to bring it, previously, it didn't seem to cement the relationship the same way that, being online and then suddenly meeting in person did. So there really is something about that it feels almost, I don't want to say special, but in some ways it does, because it's now not a given. It is very much purposefully chosen that we will make the effort and meet in person. So yeah, cheers to what Madelaine said.
Anything to add, Vish?
Yeah, no, I agree with both of them, but I may have a slightly different opinion. Because when we talk about hybrid, we talk about that how our entire customer engagement journey will look like, right? What part of that will be in person and what part will be online. Now, according to a survey done by PwC in January 2020, 83% of employers claimed that switching to remote was successful. But even virtual has its own limitations, right? So the way I look at post-pandemic in-person meetings would be more valuable because, I would like to have more purposeful and more value-added meetings with my customers so that I can have better communication. I can have stronger relationships. I can build more trust. And at the end of the day, I can do maybe more meaningful work during those in-person meetings, and the rest of the business transaction can be done online. So there will be a combination where, again, companies, employers, employees have to decide which part can be done virtually and which can be done very meaningfully in a valued way in-person meetings.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but as a customer, how do you now sell me that I have to give up time to meet with you that's likely going to take 2x, 3x longer than meeting online, because now I'm almost brainwashed that my time is broken down into 15, 30, 45, and 60-minute intervals because that's what Calendly has actually dictated for me. And so how do I now give you, the 67 minutes because I'm walking you to a door or an office I don't actually have because we're meeting somewhere in the middle. So how do you then kind of sell the customer of, yes, now you need to give up your precious time to build the relationship? Vish, anything Anything you want to dig into that?
Sure. Again, right? There are certain engagements that are more beneficial, when done in person. For example, could be I had to do a success planning or a business value workshop with a client where we had 10 different business leaders. Now they were all on the screen, so we couldn't get the collective sentiment of the vision statement, where the company is going, and we lacked that that chit chat that we have, that guys, what is the real problem here? So if there is a strategic required engagement required, then we can again convince and persuade the customer to spend and invest their time in having in person and get away from the screen, where we are multiplied by 8 by 10.
Madelaine, what's your thoughts?
I actually do agree with a lot of what Vish just said. So speaking from experience today, we have a big project kicking off. It was one of those ones where I think if we had done some in-person brainstorming, actual work together, the sponsors from their side, the sponsors from our side, that lends itself to a better working environment. There's tons of tools you can do that with remotely, but it is not the same as getting everybody in a room, kind of all thinking about the same things at the same time, again, with that no distraction piece. So I think some of those meetings, some of those very, very, work heavy meetings, if that's what we're going to call them, my scenario, one that I'm living through right now, is that would have been better in person, where you have everybody at the table, brainstorming, collaborating, kind of building out a plan, mapping it out. The QBR type meetings, the very, very formal business ones, anything signing deal, I'm happy to continue doing those remote, because I very much am going to look forward to going to see a client and having more of the wine and dine experience, where it's, let's build a relationship. Let's talk about things that aren't necessarily work. Let's actually form some, a connection that is not, is the project going as we plan? So kind of some real life experience happening right now. But I think, Vish, I understand what you say. And there's definitely points in time where those work heavy meetings need to be done in person, I think, and we've escaped them and we can do them remote, but there's a time and a place.
Yeah, the work, right? The work that's actually being done in the meeting, and then the outcome that you're driving on makes sense, especially if you're working with your team versus even working with your customer, depending on the stage and evolution that they might be in. Yeah, I can follow that as well. Anita, anything to add?
I was just going to agree again. I find when I like Madelaine's term, so I'll stick with it, the work heavy meetings where, yes, they can be done online, but I find that the quality suffers, that sometimes hard questions aren't asked in the same way as when you're sitting in a room together and you realize that, in person, you actually get a sense, a feel for the room that I find I just don't get in the same way online. And again, I think to Madelaine's earlier point, it's because I don't know what else is going on. It's very easy to get distracted. And so when we've done online sessions, they've been good, but you get the sense that they could have been a lot better, that we could have dug a lot deeper, that there's also the opportunity in person, and especially when you're laying out the plans for going forward, where sometimes you're walking out of a room and you chat with somebody and next thing you know, there's a bit of a brainstorm or in the hallway. And those opportunities are gone when we just work online. Everybody signs off and we just go off to our own thing. And it's those, serendipities, those moments, which can sometimes really shift or bring massive value just because it took a little bit longer to click. And so I find that those are the things that are really missing. Plus, the chance to develop the relationship by seeing everybody together. So great. I agree for some things that are more business-like, but where you're trying to plan and build, I still think in person as much as possible should be the top priority.
So if we're talking about our customers in this particular vein that's there, the travel itself does have an impact on the team, right? Because one thing that the pandemic did bring us is, getting home quicker. The commute is sensational. At my house, it's like 4 steps and I'm in my kitchen. It's great. And so as a result, now when we start to think about, okay, you're going to go on a customer site and visit, regardless of the outcome, like if the work is, a brainstorming session, or the work is, establishing relationship and doing more wine and dine experience, there is still now a commute element that is not there before. So now we have to take into consideration the work-life balance that comes into play, because we've been in a group environment or a work environment where it's always been you're online. So let's talk about that and that impact that that's going to have on the team. Anita, let's start with you.
I think with anything, when the decision is made that, this is our process going forward, these are the types of meetings where we are going to push for in-person versus online. It's preparing and communicating to the team as much as possible in advance, and what that means. Like, humans are resistant to change. Even if we don't like the change, or we don't like our current situation and the change might be good, we still have a tendency to push against it. So as with anything, when there's a big change like that, it's allowing for those feelings to come up, and then talking about what it will look like, and getting input from the team. I know, again, like this conversation that we're having, I'm going to digest as I walk away and see, say for our team, when are we going to go back on site and start, talking with our customers again? It's a big thing because, yeah, we have, it's click off and then you walk out of the room and you're at home. So we need to have several discussions about this, and then decide as well, what are the best points to do this, and how to, I think, ease back into it is really the biggest part of it, versus just, jumping right back in. That never seems to work out well from my experience.
Madelaine, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think, Anita, you make some really, really good points. The pandemic has taught all of us, you have to be respectful of what people are want to and willing to do, right? This has changed a lot of what people feel safe and comfortable doing. And of course, I would be respectful of, my entire team. Travel is a big deal now. It's a lot bigger deal than it was before, especially if it involves getting on a plane and going somewhere else. And that would be what a lot of the travel for us at our organization would be. So I think, being mindful of that, presenting it again, I think the ease in, like you said, Anita, is really important. And obviously there will be people who are probably more willing and less willing to do that. I think, there shouldn't be a mandate to go back to the clients. I think if you're willing to take a personal vacation and you're getting on a plane, you should probably be okay to do work trips. And so that would be my opinion on that very specifically. But then of course, right, it is going to be a different work-life balance going forward. If you're going to be going out and about right now, I don't really think anybody shuts off at 5 o'clock because everything is so available all the time. I laugh and think about going into the pandemic. There was that meme, everyone's going to find out which meeting could have been an email. I actually feel like that's been reversed, that my calendar has never been fuller. It's not great, but it kind of forces you to rethink those things. And you need to, if we're going to be traveling again, we need to make sure we're setting our teams up to be successful and have what they need and travel comfortably if they're going to be traveling, and then have downtime when they need it.
Well said. Vish, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree with what Madelaine shared, right? Definitely there will be an impact on travel, right? We have to be more mindful than, do we need to travel? And also, like, getting approval from my manager will be not as easy as it was earlier, right? So we have to justify why we're meeting. And then the whole discussion on the environment and the health and safety, right? At least for now, in next 6 months will be there. In terms of work-life balance, as I said, like, as much as we thought online meetings are a boon for us, during this pandemic, and we all loved this, and then all of a sudden we all were working from 9 to 9. So at least in my organization, after a couple of months, work-life balance was talked about a lot, right? People were working day and night. There was no off and on, it was always on. And people had those fatigues, you want to call it virtual fatigues or web camera fatigues or whatever it was there. And then with all the things that were going on, it took a toll on everyone's health, and especially mental health, right? So I think it's important as we move forward, we have to be cognizant of all the aspects, be it work-life balance, be it travel time, and ensuring that we are driving us and our employees on the success path and helping our customers drive success. So I think there are so many multi dimensions to it moving forward, and we have to be very cognizant of all of those.
Yeah, and I think another thing to add is, the workforce is changing as well, right? You might now be working across Canada, for example, where you're not just everyone headquartered within, say, the general Toronto area. And so as a result, then the travel will be different for someone that might be in Vancouver if they're traveling to Montreal, for example, to visit a customer. And also, one thing the pandemic did bring by being able to hire and work remote is an opportunity for those that are at a disadvantage when having to go into some form of a headquartered environment, where they have travel is more difficult from them. And so if we now actually create more of a mandate to build a relationship, to establish a relationship, means you now need to do it in person, we might be actually creating an unfair bias for those that are at a bit more of a disadvantage. So there's a lot of things to consider as we start to open up and go into in-person meetings, because what if the customer don't actually have headquarters anymore because their company have elected to go digitally first? So the logistics of now finding some form of a work environment to work in, or a dinner place that's appropriate depending on the accessibility needs of the customer and also the individual themselves, add all of these dimensions that's in there as well to consider. Are there any others, things like that us as leaders or even those that's going to be traveling on site need to consider? Anita, Madelaine, Vish, anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Star, just as you were commenting about, not having offices, and what does that mean in terms of what you need to bring with you to ensure that the meeting goes well? Because the assumption was previously you would go to the office, there'd be a meeting room, there would be whatever you needed set up. And now if you're renting space, I mean, perhaps hotels, they often, you can book there, they have AV and all of those different things that you can purchase, but perhaps that's not available. So where else do you meet? And it suddenly makes your checklist of what you need to bring and prepare that much longer. So, just logistically, it will be a bigger challenge. And then I just want to say also on the customer side, being very sensitive about how they feel about meeting in person as well. Not everybody feels free enough to be mask free. Some people still want to wear their masks when they meet or in closed environments. So I think there's a lot of sensitivities that we just never considered before that we do now. And so the pre-meeting checklist, if you're going to be meeting in person, suddenly has become much longer. And there's many other considerations that we just didn't have before that we need to make sure that we're checking those off before we actually meet.
Anyone else want to add anything? If not, I'm going to change us in a different direction. Vish mentioned this earlier, and it was more in our pre-chat, and was about the channels in which you're communicating with our vendors, right? Like today, some of you might be chatting directly in Slack or even Teams with your customer. You might be doing the email thing back and forth, plus there's the Zoom or the Teams meeting or what other technology you might be using. But there is a bit more of demand of you go to where your customers are. Where before it was more of like, all right, yeah, you're going to use my channel. It's email. Email is the preferred channel. And maybe, those elite groups might have some other type of communication channel. And so I wanted to get the thoughts and perspective on when we're talking about different other channels to communicate with our customers, whether that is in person being one, email, or even an online meeting being, another two different forms, Slack being another one. But what that means as we start to establish relationships, because a text message with a customer or Slack message or in-person meeting all has different forms of a relationship depth that it was before. So Vish, I'm going to pass it to you because I know that you were digging into this in our prep meeting and you had some interesting commentary there.
Yeah, as much as I love what I do, I'm also very passionate about, what the future holds for us, and especially in customer success. Now in customer success, the majority of our work is with our customers. So I was researching on that beyond this whole hybrid model, what model can take the center stage. Now, hybrid is the combination of both in person and online. And, the channel that, I found out will be taking the center stage in the near future will be the omni channel. Now, retailers use it to provide a seamless customer experience to their customers, be it in store or be online. And on those similar lines, we as customer success managers will be doing the same. We would like to engage with our customers where they want and how they want. And what I mean by that is, Madelaine gave an example of this, business envisioning workshop where she said if it would be in person, it would have been more beneficial. Whereas Anita at the same time said some of the customers may not want to come. So as companies or vendors, I think we would offer different options, value-added options to our customers. Whichever channel they would like to embrace, they can embrace. But from a vendor standpoint, we will be offering them, let's say, in-person experience, online experience. And even in online, I see that you can go from your desktop to your tablet and from your tablet to mobile. So there are apps out there for these applications that we use, right? So the goal is to provide a seamless experience to a customer, be it in person, be it online, and do the work that is required to be done so that they can get the work done from our side. I think that is the model that we as a company are working on. And I'm sure like other, our friends in our competitors, I should say, are working on the same.
Madelaine, any thoughts?
Yeah, I really agree with what Vish said. I think you always want to cater to your customer, right? And customer success, isn't that the aim of the game, right? You want to delight and build relationships, whatever kind of means possible. I think where things get kind of tricky there is with Slack specifically. I know you mentioned that, and I'm just calling out Slack as one of them, but that to me is a very, very transactional, tool. And, I'm not going to say the bane of my existence, but I use Slack all day long and chatting. And I feel like for anything purposeful with a client or a customer, that might be a challenging avenue to take, as it can just, Slack is essentially like texting somebody back and forth, right? If you're just trying to get your message across, it's not that formalized and I guess more formal way of communicating with the client. Not to say that that's the wrong way of doing things. I think certainly the pandemic has taught us to find new ways to communicate, and that certainly is one of them. My hesitation is just around the kind of the ease at which that can happen back and forth, and just the expected response time, I think, on Slack. You get Slacks, you feel the need to respond, not that that's the wrong message to set, but it's the obligation almost that you feel as well that you need to do that. So that's the one where I think there's a little bit of not that boundary crossing, but it's a bit of a different avenue than email, which is a little bit more formal, and obviously, Zoom or in person.
I see you nodding your head, Anita.
Yeah, yes, and yes. I'm all for meeting customers in their preferred channel. I also am for setting expectations around communications as much as I can, for the reason Madelaine just mentioned, that the expectation on Slack, it's almost like you can, there's like a little hierarchy there of, email, then it might take several hours to get back. And the expectation is that that's okay, all the way down to, sort of text messaging, Slack, where it feels like it should be an instantaneous response. And with anything, I've learned the hard way that if I don't sort of set expectations and around how quickly I can respond, then inevitably there's a mess up and I have to apologize and attempt to repair the relationship. So that's what I've learned to do, is just, set some expectations about when I can respond, how quickly I can respond, so that the customer feels that they're at least being heard, and that if I can't get back because there's something else I'm dealing with, that they don't feel that they're being ignored. And so that expectation setting has been critical, but like I said, learned the hard way in setting it, but now it's been learned, and it has really made a difference, just very, very early on in the relationship, just a very quick conversation, but then also asking from their side what their expectations are of me. And, those same questions: what is your preferred channel? How quickly can I expect to hear back from you? And what, my favorite question is, if I don't hear back from you, let's say within 24 hours or something, what would you like me to do next? And that's I had this boss. Oh, he wanted you to send, no joke, like 20 emails a day of the same subject so that he could somehow, I don't know, keep it top of his mind. To me, that I wouldn't want that. And so, having those expectations, having that discussion, it can kind of clear the way and then take some pressure off, really, from feeling like you've got to be on 24/7.
I find it fascinating, and this is dating me a little bit, that I would not give I worked at a services company, and I would never give my cell phone out. And it used to be the battle that I would have with the company, because like, but you have a work cell phone. I was like, yeah, so that I can check my emails off hours, because that's what you want me to do, not so I can be on call 24/7. But it was interesting, and the reason why I found it was interesting is only the customers that I had established a strong relationship were the ones I've actually would give and trust them with the phone number. And I'm wondering whether Slack is going to go that way, where only those that you actually have that strong relationship, because text messaging is actually a form of building a strong relationship, whether you can't get in person to meet them, but you're able to open another channel like Slack or text or any other channel you can communicate, so you can get more to that personal level. Because Madelaine, when you were talking about it, you were essentially saying, like, to go on site is to build a more personal rapport. Go a level deeper, make it a more personalized experience where it's not all about the work. It's about actually getting to know one another and working more, more closely. And so I'm wondering whether at some point Slack will make that switch for people.
Maybe I'll jump in on that thought, because I completely agree. And Anita, what you said really, really resonates with me on asking that question of your customers. I think why that resonates with me is that's a really good lesson for anybody who's a leader to give to their team. In protecting their time. Everybody is, working around the clock. 9 to 5 is kind of gone with this remote world. So I think that's just a really valuable lesson and question, and something to take away from this, certainly for me, to pass along to my team. It's hard, and you want to, as a leader, be able to protect your team's time, to make sure that they have time outside of work, but also that they are still being there for the customers that we value so much. So I appreciate you saying that. That's definitely a takeaway for me.
Selena, I see you have a question. Do you want to ask the panel directly?
Yeah, I was just, I find this conversation super fascinating, and something that was crossing my mind when Vish, you were talking about omnichannel, is that I know of, some companies where they have had that Slack channel or the Teams channel with the customer. But what about the idea of having a Slack group or team channel where your customers talk to other customers? Forget the old communities on your support site and forums, but actually within a channel, like a communication system like a Slack or Teams. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna steal that from you, because we are working on digital communities, as we all know, right? We're talking about online meetings, and that's a very good platform for customers to network, connect, and share. Like, and again, I don't want to talk a lot about Teams, but there are so many new things that we are offering, and function and features. So something like that, what you mentioned, is very possible. And I think it's it should be done sooner than later, where we give that platform to our customers, to connect, to share their ideas, learn best practices under the teams. And they're using that teams as a platform, as a product. So not only it is giving them the opportunity to share the ideas online, but also testing and trying the application that their customer of. Does that answer your question, Selena?
Yeah, I'm just curious if it's something that I think there's a hesitation to set up groups where your customers might talk to each other in some instances. And in other instances, I think, we're one, they're many, right? Why wouldn't we want them to help and share each other, like share practices and avoid mistakes that they've made? Like we shouldn't be so afraid to let them talk to each other, but I think there is a hesitation. So I'm just curious about what other people all thought.
I've been a sales guy for a decade, and that was the conversation we had, right? Why we need customers to connect and share and talk about the things that we don't want. But since I've, joined the customer success, that's exactly what we want. We want, those conversations to happen because those are the means to improve our product or our customer experience. So I think as a customer success, a professional, something like this should be done and is possible within the realms of our application.
Selena, when you were thinking about this, would you think that it would be a moderated channel so that there's someone in there helping to facilitate discussions, or were you thinking it would be more just, allow them to go in there and just sort of watch what's happening?
So I think it depends on who owns it. So in the scenarios where I know it's been used, it started off as a CSM bringing together just a few of their own account customers, where the one person sort of moderated it, but it would get bigger and bigger. So at some point, if it becomes something that someone in marketing manages, or you have a community manager, because to an extent I can see there being challenges with this size, and you might want to form sub-communities based on their segment or their industry or something of that nature. So I have no idea what the answer is. I think that there is this desire for customers to talk to each other. And we feel like a bit of the gatekeepers by like, yeah, I can try to introduce you to someone that's like you, as opposed to just opening the gates, right?
Yeah, do a donut or whatever other type of, coffee combination mix up to go, hey, meet this customer, chat, instead of us being the brokerage in between. Today's session, we went through multiple different topics as we explored online versus in person, the value in person brings, the value that online could bring, or even a hybrid model can bring to your organizations. Different things to consider if you are going to go to the in-person route. What is the impact to the customer? What is the impact to your employees and the work-life balance? We talked about protecting our time and how the tools in which we use day to day in order to start to establish relationships in an online setting can also be, disrupting the balance of work-life balance. And so how to do the pushback or even set the right appropriate expectations so that we are being timely in our responses and respectful at the same time. And then also we got into, what does the next thing look like? How do we go about building or establishing rapport if everything is more online or there is enablement or technology that's available? So lots of different avenues that we got into. From the panel perspective, was there anything that you each wanted to leave the community with, or something I missed in the wrap up?
I think it was a great conversation. Thanks for hosting it. And at some point, if people are willing, it would be nice to meet everybody in person.
We're hoping, fingers crossed, that Ontario is going to open again and we'll have things in person. If things do open up, how many might be in person? Or, it all depends on how Ontario tends to open up and where the comfort level is. So we'll keep you posted about having these types of sessions going back to in person, which is where they were in the first place.
I just have to say this has been fantastic. Really enjoyed it. I just want to leave with this one thing. And I think that there's going to be a bit of a transition as things open up and we figure out, those of us who are comfortable might get out. You're always going to have your people who want to get out there and meet in person. You're going to have others who are perhaps a little more reluctant. Again, it's taking the temperature of the team and there's going to be a transition period, and realize that that's okay. And it might be a little messy and mistakes might be made, but that's just how we will figure out going forward what's the best way to serve our customers.
Perfect. I'll just say thank you for having me. And it was a phenomenal, list of panelists that I had to share my ideas with, and with all of you. The last thing I'll say that, what has, this whole thing taught me is just, live the life to the fullest, right? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So, do your work, you have your family, take care of family, take care of your health, and just live life to the fullest. That's all.
On that note, enjoy your evening.